Well, fuck, guys.
Okay.
I have a wet computer,
You
but
fuck
that's
guys.
not gonna. Well, that's true.
Any port of storm.
What a week! It is episode 125 coming at you.
Yeah.
And boy, it's a show of shows.
It's an uplifting show, which is bizarre for us.
Yeah.
Especially given your subject matter, Doug.
I'm going to start out by talking about the Westboro Baptists, which seems like it would be nothing but terrible.
But yours ends up. Here's the weird thing. I'm doing a story about inspiration, and I'm the least inspirational of all of our stories.
Yeah,
It's the downer.
I pull a diamond out of that pile of shit somehow.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It's it's from the Bible. There's not much I can do about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm doing a little how-to today. We're going to do a little how-to about the journey you may be on, or maybe have finished, or maybe you're waiting to start. But anyway, we're going to talk about that, and hopefully it's a nice time for everyone involved. And especially because today we're sponsored by the 1991 Sizzler promotional video.
Oh, my God.
Terrific, great get for us. So, I'll include that in the show notes. If you love two different restaurant concepts in one, Sizzler 1991 is for you.
Yeah, I didn't know Sizzler. I knew Sizzler was a restaurant. I didn't know it was a way of life.
It is. So everybody tie your hair back with a ribbon.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Let's do a show.
I texted Mark, there's more shoulder pads at Sizzler than there is in the NFL.
And one last quick note, we'll talk about it again in the patron segment. We're doing patron-only content every week. If you want us to talk about a subject, send us an email, tell us you're a patron, and we'll probably talk about it.
And the rest of you don't get to hear it, so
Stay out in the cold.
Yeah. So
moving on. Let's do this show. Hey, Uncle Mark.
Howdy.
There's a sign over my right shoulder in the room that I'm sitting in. A sign that you actually gave to me.
God sends us a sign from time to time, Daniel.
And God did theoretically send this sign, but not to me and not to you, but to someone.
Yes.
The sign is not nice.
No, it's not. And I have one as well that actually hangs in my bathroom.
That's right. Uncle Doug, you have one too.
Yeah.
We're bad people just for having these signs.
Kind of.
And Uncle Doug's here to tell us all about what the signs say and why the fuck they say it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We don't have to go into the weeds of how we got those signs, but Doug, you may say why that we do have them.
Well, dear uncles, unfortunately, not everyone you meet on the street is a kind or even good person. It's often hard to tell who is good and who is bad.
Hell, not everyone you meet in this podcast is a
True
kind
enough.
person.
But sometimes people make it easy by, say, standing outside the funeral of a murdered gay teen with a sign that says God hates fags. Such is the case with today's particularly nasty cult, the Westboro Baptists. Located in Topeka, Kansas, who apparently just won the Super Bowl, so go Kansas. That's awesome. They didn't even play a team, and they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're pretty good that way.
Yeah, they were founded in November of 1955 by one Fred Waldron Phelps Sr.,
Waldron?
Who recently died in March of 2014. The current number of adherents is unknown, but at its height, and most evil time, it consisted of only about 40 people, nearly all of them directly related to Phelps, except for one other family and a couple other random hangers-on.
Huh.
Unfortunately, almost all of you listening to my voice already know who these vile people are, and that's almost certainly because of the fact that this tiny little cult has made it its life work to be as provocative as our very liberal speech laws will allow by taking a steaming dump on basically every norm of a civilized society and rubbing our noses in our own tolerance. So, while researching this segment, I had to wallow in the darkest of swamps, which unfortunately means that I'm going to use the word fag liberally in this segment. Uncle Mark, I hope that I can that without...
Doug normally only does that off the air, you guys. So yeah.
There's no way around it, unfortunately. So let's just get into it.
The only way out is through, as
That's right.
As Judy Garland used to say.
So as far down in the dumps as I got reading about these people and watching documentaries, interviews, their own propaganda, and endless YouTube clips, I ended up in a surprisingly hopeful and self-challenging place that I did not expect. So come with me, won't you? Like all cults of personality, no. Okay, skip ahead 20 minutes. Like all cults of personality, we need to spend a little time on that personality in order to properly understand what comes next. And there's not really a lot to understand what Fred Phelps was, but he was it very early.
Yeah.
He was born in 1929 in Meridian, Mississippi to devout Methodist parents. His mother died 6 years later, so Fred was raised by his aunt until his father remarried a divorced woman in 1944. That will matter.
Shame.
Yeah. He was a stellar student, an Eagle Scout, and was accepted to West Point. However, he decided not to attend, becoming a Southern Baptist minister at the age of 17. For reasons unknown, but perhaps because he had rejected his appointment to West Point that his father had worked hard to secure, or because he rejected his father's Methodist faith, or because he rejected his father for marrying a divorced woman, Phelps separated himself from his father, stepmother, and sister and never spoke to them again. Phelps became a street preacher in California for a time before marrying and landing in Topeka, Kansas, where he became an associate pastor of the East Side Baptist Church before finally becoming the pastor of the brand new Westboro Baptist Church in 1954. Excuse me. Phelps earned a law degree from Washburn University in 1964, and in one of his many contradictions, was a champion of civil rights. He took on Jim Crow laws in Kansas with some degree of success. He was even given an award by the local branch of the NAACP.
Wait, who?
Fred Phelps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about someone entirely. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You said nice things about somebody, and we got very confused.
Yeah, me too, believe me. However, his antics and weirdness got the best of him, and he was eventually disbarred. So
that's not just antics.
No, the story of how he got disbarred, it's just not worth going into.
Right.
But it's fucking bananas. Anyway.
Fred and his antics.
At the time of his death, he had 13 children, 54 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. This captive progeny would make up the bulk of his congregation as his increasingly unhinged rhetoric drove almost everyone else away. However, many of these relatives would end up leaving Phelps and the church, alleging severe physical and emotional abuse. Surprise.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah. In its inception, the Westboro Baptist Church was a pretty innocuous, if overly zealous, branch of Southern Baptism, believing in biblical literalism and Calvinism. But Phelps distinguished himself from other Baptist ministers only in his severity and fanaticism, not in his core beliefs. That is until 1991, when Fred decided to start picketing Gage Park in Topeka, Kansas, claiming it was claiming it was, quote, a den of anonymous homosexual activity. How exactly he knew this is a mystery, but not much of one.
Where is that exactly?
Just write it down.
Yeah.
Within a couple years, protesting against homosexuality became the church's prime directive, and by 1994, they were traveling around the country spreading their own kind of homegrown hate. By their own account...
Some young man really spurned him in a way that he was not able to...
Yep. Mm-hmm. By their own account, at the high water mark of their activities in the early 2000s, they protested up to 6 locations a day and 15 on Sundays.
Jesus.
I know. They have picketed in all 50 states and claim that as of 2009 to have protested 41,000 locations. It's estimated they spend around $250K annually on protesting, and I don't know where their money comes from. It's crazy.
So can I jump in really quick? For some reason, I was online years ago in an AMA that one of the Phelps, I think it was probably Nate, one of the escapees, was giving, and my question was, where do they get the money? How do they do this? And he said, well, they all have jobs outside of this, which is hard to believe with their picketing schedule.
Yeah, right.
But like the main woman whose name I can't remember, was a successful lawyer, and they all give essentially all their money to the church. So they just tithe at 70%, right? That's where the money comes from.
That's crazy.
There you go.
One of the things they are best known for is their hate-filled signage. Their printing operation is truly remarkable. They have produced thousands upon thousands of colorful rectangular signs with slogans like, God hates fags, God hates Jews, God sent the shooter, God sent AIDS, thank God for dead soldiers, thank God for IEDs, fag enabler in hell, fag military, fags are beasts, and fags burn in hell, among hundreds of others.
Well, Doug, I think on the other side of your sign, doesn't it just say God hates you?
That's the one I have. That's actually the one that's facing at. God hates you. Which,
just in case, like, if you don't know who's coming at you, just that one will work.
Right? I love that. It puts me so perfectly in my place in the universe.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
God is all powerful. He made everything, and he personally hates me.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no more mysteries to solve.
He created you. and went, man, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, this part of my research I did in a coffee shop, and scrolling through page after page of these signs made me no friends.
I'll tell you what, man, this show has fucked my Google history.
For sure.
Like all of the ads that are targeted to us are forever ruined.
The algorithm probably thinks of me as a pretty woke Nazi.
Right.
So, the provenance of this, how these signs came to us, is several years ago, me and a friend found out that they were making a stop here in Salt Lake to protest a church. It turned out not to be a Mormon one, weirdly. So we headed down to see them for ourselves. Their protests are fairly quick. They show up and stand around until the local press shows up, and then poof.
Yeah, it's all about getting the press.
That's all it is. My buddy happens to be a photographer, so we snapped a few photos of them. We ended up chatting with them a little bit, and again, we were surprised by their concurrent fanaticism and rationality.
Yeah.
My buddy offered to send them some pictures, and they immediately said yes, and that's how one piece of evil Americana hangs in my bathroom.
Yeah, it was a trade.
Yeah,
So we got a box of like real Fred Phelps clip art hate.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. The one that's here in the studio says on one side it says God hates fags, and on the other side it says God hates Jews, and it's a much better side because the O in God is a smiley face, and it's wearing a rabbinical sort of so Jewish hat and has the ear locks,
The Tiflum
coming down.
It's got the
Yeah.
Tiflum. Yeah.
So there's
It's a masterwork,
sparkle.
really.
Yeah.
It really is.
So, like any junkie that needs a bigger and bigger hit to get high, the Westboro Baptists have escalated their protests over the years, eventually employing their most despicable and effective tactic, protesting funerals.
Yeah.
Despicable because there may be no lower and loathsome an act than preying on grieving families for the purposes of garnering publicity. Effective because garnering publicity is the oxygen to Phelps and his crew.
Yeah.
And this tactic has made them internationally known. In perhaps history's truest adherence to the axiom, all publicity is good publicity, the Westboro Baptists welcome your hate as long as it gets them on TV or in the newspaper. In the late 90s and especially through the early 2000s, Phelps and his followers showed up at funerals for victims of the Sago mine disaster, the Aurora theater shooting, the Sandy Hook school shooting,
Oh,
the Pulse nightclub shooting, the funerals of dead soldiers, as well as the funerals of Matthew Shepard, Gordon B. Hinckley, George Tiller, and Michael Jackson, to name just a few.
Gordon Hinckley was the president of the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
So that for you non-Mos out there.
That name is not like the others.
And a well-known champion of gay rights. What the fuck is that symbol? I don't know. What?
So nowadays, the mere threat of appearing sends people into a frenzy, a fact that the Westboro Baptists take full advantage of.
Oh, they love it.
Yep, they threaten to show up to funerals all over the country, only not to bother to show up because they got what they wanted already. Their hate is not restricted to homosexuals. Fred Phelps had plenty of hate in his heart for everyone, including atheists, Mormons, Hindus, Catholics, Muslims, more moderate Christians, which from the perspective of the Westboro Baptists is all Christians.
All everybody's.
Yeah, and there is no love lost between Phelps and every sect of Christianity whose views he shares, as he has been denounced by everyone from the Southern Poverty Law Center to the 700 Club. The universal condemnation from Christian groups came in spite of the fact that there is really no daylight between the beliefs of the Westboro Baptists and every other Baptist/evangelical group in America. It's just a disagreement about tactics.
And usage of the word fag.
Yes.
Yeah.
But their most burning and alarming hate is reserved for the Jews. Their website, of course, godhatesfags.com, has an incredible amount of content updated nearly every day, including sermons, articles, clips of their protests, and even badly produced musical parodies to such songs as Come Together by the Beatles, Beat It by Michael Jackson, and Happy by Pharrell Williams.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they're really, really weird. They do choreographed dance numbers to these songs that they've written new lyrics for.
So gay. Wow. Do they not know that choreography is pretty gay?
Well, Mark, you haven't seen this choreography.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be immediately disowned by any gay person for sure.
But their anti-Semitic content makes everything else they do seem G-rated by comparison.
Really?
This stuff is so shocking and so vile that I absolutely could not watch it at the coffee shop. In fact, when I went home, I pulled the blinds to make sure no one could see it from the street.
Wow.
It is the most evil and demented anti-Semitic stuff I have ever seen. I am including Nazi propaganda in this. One of the only videos tame enough to even talk about is of two men dressed as Hasidic Jews wrestling each other for several minutes over a loose penny on the street.
Oh, my God.
Everything else is degrees worse than that. And yes, they deny the Holocaust and protest Jewish sites, particularly on Jewish holidays. So we need to talk about the why for a second. Why are they doing this, and what are they hoping to accomplish? From refugees of the church, there seems to be several overlapping purposes. The first and foremost is notoriety, which is also truly the most galling. Here's the thing about them. If you watch them on YouTube or in some of the documentaries about them, they don't come across as deranged. No. Even if they're talking about their most vile beliefs, they are surprisingly cogent, even up to date on pop culture and politics. In fact, several of them have law degrees, which is one of the ways they're able to afford their near constant stream of lawsuits. Honestly, they sound more grounded and coherent than House and Senate Republicans, and for real, even when defending their beliefs. So, interviews with the ones who have managed to escape bear out the fact that they are not stupid rubes, which leads us to a second possible purpose to their acts. One of the more jarring visuals at any Westboro Baptist protest is the presence of very young children, some too young to even read, holding profane and hateful signs. Here's the thing, and this is also borne out by escapees. They indoctrinate their children to believe that the world at large and all outsiders are evil, violent, angry, and sinful, and that their enemies are angry that they are merely trying to spread God's word. Then they go to these protests, holding signs they can't even read, and total strangers scream at them, flip them off, spit on them, and swear at them. Very often, gay couples will make out in front of them as a protest move.
Which we encourage.
Of course.
That's the only thing that I would encourage of all of them.
Right.
Don't spit on them or don't even engage with them.
Of course not, yeah.
But if you want to make out with someone of the same gender, go for it.
Have at it. And the problem is, to your point, Uncle Dan, these reactions to their actions are understandable and even appropriate from our point of view. But for these children, it's proof positive that everything their parents are telling them about the world is true, and that's what leads to their terrifyingly lucid fanaticism as they become adults.
Right.
Fortunately, their awful tactics have not grown into a larger movement and have alienated them as much as they have made them famous. So, but the fact of the matter is the Westboro Baptists want our hate, seek our hate, cultivate our hate, and then reap our hate for their own purposes. And at least according to them, it's working. So here's just two examples of that. In 1996, two men left a pipe bomb outside Fred's daughter's house, believing it to be his. The bomb damaged an SUV and a fence, and the two men were caught and punished. This was one of their first major PR victories, making them national figures, to their delight.
Right.
They have been sued countless times by victims of families and municipalities, and have won almost all of them. The most famous case involving these monsters is Snyder v. Phelps, which involved the funeral of Lance Corporal Matthew A. Snyder. Matthew was killed in a non-combat vehicle accident in Iraq in 2006. At his funeral in Maryland, the Westboro Baptists showed up and protested. They had signs that read, "Fag troops, Semper Fi fags, thank God for dead troops, and God hates you." Not only did the Westboro Baptists protest the funeral, they published statements online that denounced the Snyder family and blamed them for the death of their son because they were Catholic and had let their son join the military. So Matthew's father, Albert, sued them for intrusion upon seclusion, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil conspiracy. He won the case in the District Court of Maryland, and the jury awarded him $10.9 million in damages.
Oh, you're going to make me sad right now.
I am, yeah.
Because that made me happy.
I'm going to make you very sad. The ruling was appealed and made its way inevitably toward the Supreme Court. Publicity of this case made international news and was therefore seen as a huge PR win by Phelps and crew. They even made signs that said, "Thank God for $10.9 million." And here's how scrambled things got politically. NPR, the ACLU, and the Associated Press wrote briefs in support of the Westboro Baptists, while Bill O'Reilly and Mitch McConnell pledged support for Snyder.
Because they were supporting the First Amendment rights?
Yes,
Is that what
the
they were saying?
ACLU was supporting First Amendment rights, and of course Bill O'Reilly and McConnell reflexively support the troops. But it's, these people scramble us.
Yeah.
It's hard to see who the good guys and bad guys are. The case reached the Supreme Court in 2011, and Phelps won the case 8-1, with only Justice Alito dissenting. Excuse me. Again, words I thought I would never say. Alito's dissent is persuasive, arguing that, quote, "In order to have a society in which public issues can be openly and vigorously debated, it is not necessary to allow the brutalization of innocent victims like petitioner," end quote. Yeah. So, it's a good point.
Yeah.
And indeed, many civilized countries in the world have anti-hate speech laws, including Germany, France, and the UK. But before we even think about going down that road, we must consider how ineffective those laws have been of late in curbing the reemergence of anti-Semitism and right-wing fascism. And if you'd asked me about enacting some form of anti-hate speech laws here 3 years ago, I might have been a pretty open audience. But, Bill Barr is in charge of our Justice Department.
Right.
And Paula White is whispering in the ear of the president. Like, I think we need the most liberal interpretation of free speech we can get right now, right? So
maybe. I don't know. Maybe nobody's allowed to speak for a minute.
I would be fine with that.
Everybody shut up for just a minute.
Just a minute.
Freedom of speech also guarantees freedom of silence, You don't have you don't have to say anything.
Can that be the slogan of the podcast going forward?
Yes. Everyone loves an audio format entertainment that's quiet.
Of us yelling, "Shut up, yous."
So here's the thing, though. If we continue to have these broad laws protecting free speech, which have to include a tolerant attitude towards religious belief, we are always going to have people pushing the boundaries like the Westboro Baptists on the right and Kanye West on the left.
Kanye West's on the left?
I don't know. I just thought I'd throw Kanye West in because he's crazy.
Would you call that left? I don't think that's left, but point taken.
This leads us to the final question. What the fuck are we supposed to do with these people? The reaction most of us have had, myself included, is to treat them badly. I didn't flip them off or yell at them when I saw them face to face, but nor was I kind to them, and I didn't do anything to stop the people who were being mean to them.
Right.
This reaction is what they want. Think of it all from the perspective of these poor children and how us taking the easy bait perpetuates the hate of the parents and very possibly delays or even prevents the children from getting out. So, in all this disheartening content, I found myself watching the TED Talk of Megan Phelps Roper, one of the granddaughters of Fred Phelps, who for many years featured prominently in protests and interviews and was very nearly the face of the movement. So,
yeah, just even as a little girl.
Well, from the time she was little and all through her teens and into her 20s,
right.
She was all over their media. No, obviously no longer,
right.
Because several years ago she managed to get away and leave all that hate behind. And her journey is very instructive to the question of how to deal with people trapped in hate. Conversely to pretty much everyone else on Earth, her interactions online were far more calm and considered than her interactions in real life. This was, of course, because in person, the Westboro Baptists are designed to bypass your empathy and trigger your rage, but online, they're just words in a DM.
Right.
So she began conversing with a few people for the first time in her life who were not mean to her, didn't yell at her, and engaged her on the merits of her arguments. This kindness inevitably led her to question her strident views, which led to more questions, and eventually she got out. So in her TED Talk, in a hopeful tone, she said that the answer to the above question is both simple and hard, and named 4 tactics that we should employ if we want to have any kind of positive effect on people like her. Number 1, and this is tough, is don't assume bad intentions. This is perhaps the hardest thing to do, because what else can you assume about someone shouting fag at a grieving family of a murdered teen?
Maybe they're doing it out of love. That's
what's crazy. According to Megan, the Westboro Baptists believe what they're saying, and from their point of view and in their minds, their intent is good.
I don't question their sincerity. I think that it's awful what they're doing, but I don't question their sincerity.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We shouldn't excuse their actions or welcome their beliefs. Only we should empathize with them, regardless of their lack of empathy for others, because a lack of empathy cannot be cured by a lack of empathy.
Right, exactly.
Her second tactic is ask questions. This has several effects. Having to explain one's belief in detail forces one to really think about their beliefs, which in a lot of cases, especially people trapped in religious hate, they have never really done.
Right.
So it also shows that you're listening to them, which massively de-escalates the conversation and removes snarky retorts from their rhetorical defenses. So she said that was one of the better tactics. Third, obviously, is stay calm. It's really hard to do. Yeah. But again, her being online, she said that this was actually really helpful because people can walk away from the conversation for a minute or an hour or a day,
right? Chill
out and come back to it. We can't really do that in person.
Well,
right?
not if they're literally in 5 minutes going to be in the next state.
Precisely. And that's one of their, it works to their advantage. Her last piece of advice, and this is really interesting, was to make the argument. For 2.5 decades, she fought with nearly every stranger she ever met, but none of them ever made the argument for why what she believed might be flawed or even wrong. People got so tripped up on their provocations that they never methodically laid out an alternative.
Interesting.
Yeah, this was so effective for Megan that she not only saw the merits of what others were saying, but she started to see the flaws in her own thinking. And within a year of beginning these interactions, she had left the church with one of her sisters and even lived for a short time with a rabbi that only months before she was protesting.
Wow.
So there's hope. Yeah, Tony McAleer from Beyond Hate shared an incredible anecdote with us when we interviewed him back in episode 63 about a black woman working at McDonald's noticing the swastika tattooed on a neo-Nazi's hand,
right,
saying, "Oh, honey, you're better than that." It took years, but that tiny little act got him out.
Yeah, it was so stuck in his head he couldn't shake it. It drove him crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I myself might have seemed lost to Mormonism when I was 18, but luckily my older brother patiently challenged my beliefs and planted seeds of doubt that I sowed many years later. Now,
yeah, well, whoever that was. He's not all heroes wear capes. We'll never know. We'll never know who that was.
Well, one might say to me that my lack of empathy, this segment has a lack of empathy because of how I've talked about the Westboro Baptists, and there's a little bit of validity to that. In fact, Megan's words made me think about going back and softening some of my language. But I thought it would be more valuable for us to get to this place together. I hate what they do. I hate their actions and their rhetoric. But given the chance, do I want to help them or do I want to perpetuate their evil?
Because it's true, like when you take their bait, when their hatred inspires hatred in you, guess who just won?
Yeah, exactly.
Guess who just defeated their enemy?
Yeah, and the unfortunate truth is that some people are beyond help.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. Fred Phelps was one of those people.
Well, now that he's dead, he's especially beyond help.
Right, by definition. He died as evil and vile as he was as a teenager. His wife and some of his progeny might be beyond helping too. For example, he suffered from dementia in his final years, which they took to mean that God had condemned him, leading them to bury him without a funeral.
What? They didn't even give him a funeral?
Nope.
Oh, wow. He sowed what he reaped on that one.
Yeah, I mean...
Or God hates flowers, I guess.
Yeah, but Megan and several others were just as seemingly beyond help until they weren't. If, Fred Phelps' father had hugged him one more time, or if he'd just come out of the blessed closet, things might have ended differently, but they didn't. So after his death, the kind of the wind's gone out of the sails of the movement. They're still around, they're still posting, they're still protesting, but, hopefully with any luck, this movement, whatever it is, will die on the vine and make room for the next worst cult in America.
I while you were starting this thing, I looked up Westboro Baptist Church on Google and noticed that they had some reviews. So I clicked on the reviews of it. They're quite delightful, the Google reviews of the Westboro Baptist Church, including the first one, best Chinese restaurant around. Me and my gay partner had a wonderful time at this restaurant. The second one, Asian massage parlor in the back is amazing. We started my friend's bachelor party here in hopes of getting a happy ending, and we weren't disappointed. People were having fun. That's all I'm saying. I've been to the Westboro Baptist Church.
Have you?
I've been there, in Topeka.
Yeah.
Me and Frank from Thank God I'm Atheist went there on our little journey. And across the street, we spent a bunch of time across the street at the Equality House, which is a delightful place where a house that they just painted in a rainbow. Just to fuck with them.
Poke him in the eye.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Let's pray and hope that this thing just withers away.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Doug. That was depressing and then uplifting.
Good.
Hopefully they'll soon all be dead like Fred. Let's move on.
Oh, Jesus.